The Allen Line Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Several states are taking the pulse of truckers on the parking crisis. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine explains why it's important to chime in when and where you can in the latest installment of The Parking Zone. When you get your own authority, getting insurance is usually one of the first orders of business. We sit down with the folks from OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department to discuss what coverage is needed and more. And finally, plenty of capacity means less negotiating power for drivers. We speak with DAT about load-to-truck ratios, which declined for all three equipment types last week, and we'll also talk about what reefer haulers can expect as the July 4th holiday approaches. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit has upheld California's worker classification law known as AB 5. AB 5 was signed into law in 2019 with the stated goal of preventing businesses from misclassifying workers as independent contractors. Two drivers for Uber and Postmates filed suit that same year, arguing that AB 5 violates the Equal Protection Clause. However, in a ruling this week, the Ninth Circuit ruled unanimously in favor of California, stating that AB 5, quote, does not directly classify any particular workers as employees or independent contractors, end quote. The court went on to say that AB 5 only subjects individuals to the ABC test, which says a worker is considered an employee unless three factors are established. In a separate case, the California Trucking Association and Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association recently filed an appeal to the Ninth Circuit over AB 5. Both associations have argued that AB 5 imposes undue burdens on interstate commerce in violation of the Commerce Clause. The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration is proposing a hike in registration fees. In a notice on the Federal Register, PHMSA said an update to the annual fees is overdue. The proposal would put the fee at $3,000 for large carriers, an increase of $425. For small carriers, a total would be $375, up from the current $250. PHMSA said in its notice that the higher fees are necessary to account for increased transport of hazardous materials and the burdens placed on first responders. The move has been in the works for several months now. PHMSA telegraphed it during a notice in late 2022 and received 7 comments. Most were in opposition to a fee hike, including from the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, which encouraged the agency to maintain registration fees for small businesses at the current level, especially considering current market conditions. In addition to the higher annual fees, the agency wants to implement an electronic-only registration fee payment process. The proposal would also clarify that a certificate of registration may be carried in either electronic or paper form. The notice of proposed rulemaking has already been posted. Comments are being accepted through August 22nd, but PHMSA says it will also consider late-filed comments as well. There were more loads and more trucks on the DAT load board last week when load posts increased 5%. Stephen Pettit with DAT says there is still plenty of capacity on the market, which means less negotiating power and softer rates.
Load-to-truck ratios declined for all three equipment types last week. Reefers were 6.0, down from 6.1, meaning there were 6 loads for every truck on the load board. Flatbeds, 17.9, down from 18.8. Dry vans, by far the dominant equipment type on the load board. The average van load to truck ratio there was 4.4 last week, down from 5.0 the previous week. Van ratio averaged 4.4 in May, just the second time the monthly average van ratio has been above 4 since May 2022. So as a rule of thumb, the van ratio under 4 indicates soft demand, and those conditions have persisted for 22 out of the last 24 months. In the meantime, spot rates kind of continue to bounce along the bottom of the freight cycle. Van rate averaged $2.07 a mile over the last 7 days, or $1.64 when you subtract an amount equal to a fuel surcharge. Reefer rate $2.47 a mile, or $2 net fuel. Flatbed rate $2.60 a mile, or $2.09 net fuel. And these are weekly national average rates.
A possible strike on the northern side of the U.S. border has been averted. In a news release, the Canadian government said they had reached an agreement with the union representing more than 9,000 Canada Border Services Agency workers on Tuesday. The union had threatened a work stoppage starting on Friday. The deal is tentative for now. Ratification will follow in the coming days. No matter what happened, the Canada Border Services Agency had said the border would remain open. That's because 90% of frontline border services officers are essential workers, which means they would continue to work through a strike. But picketing and other disruptions could have led to delays in border wait times. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has announced plans to study seatbelt usage among commercial truck drivers. In a notice on the Federal Register, the agency said it hopes to better understand perceptions and behaviors regarding belt usage and road safety. An online survey of about 1,000 drivers will provide answers. FMCSA says they'll use those responses to craft messaging and communication efforts targeting CMV drivers. Federal regulations require the use of seatbelts in commercial vehicles, but the agency knows that many truck drivers do not wear them for a variety of reasons. Comments on the notice will be accepted through mid-August. Another member of Congress has signed on to support a bill that would guarantee truckers the basic right to use the bathroom at shippers and receivers. Representative Susan Wild of Pennsylvania is the eighth co-sponsor of H.R. 3869, otherwise known as the Trucker Bathroom Access Act. The bill is about as simple as it gets. It would not require any funding or any new facilities. It would simply require that shippers and receivers make their bathrooms available to truckers who are dropping off or loading up at their facilities. The bill is truly bipartisan in nature. It was introduced by Republican Congressman Troy Nehls of Texas and is co-sponsored by 4 of his GOP colleagues, alongside 4 of his Democratic colleagues. It also has the support of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. To get your representatives in Washington, D.C. on board, head to fightingfortruckers.com and click on the Key Trucking Legislation tab at the top of the page. It's going to be several months before Teton Pass is open to traffic again. That's according to the Wyoming DOT, which says work on repairs has already begun, but that work will last until at least November. In the meantime, a temporary detour through part of Caribou-Targhee National Forest will be built by crews working around the clock. That process is expected to take about 2 weeks, barring any weather delays. But weight restrictions will keep most heavy trucks off of it. Any vehicle weighing more than 60,000 pounds or with a trailer will be restricted from that temporary road. The road collapsed on June 8th after getting caught up in a landslide. The eastbound bridge that carries Interstate 10 over Lake Charles in southern Louisiana has been closed for emergency repairs. Officials haven't said what the problem is or how long the bridge will be closed. Drivers heading east on I-10 are being detoured to Interstate 210 for the time being. Expect delays. And finally, New York is looking to expand truck parking along Interstate 84, but needs input from truckers before moving forward. The New York State Department of Transportation has released a survey for truckers who drive on I-84 in the Empire State. It also includes an interactive map so truckers can pinpoint where parking is needed most and leave a comment describing why they flagged that particular area. All responses are due by June 28th. We've got a link to access both the survey and the map at landlinenow.com. In the first Jason's Law truck parking survey that was conducted back in 2014, New York was identified as one of many states with a parking problem. There were just 8 public spaces per 100 miles of the national highway system, among the least in the nation. 5 years later, an updated version of the Jason's Law survey revealed not much had changed. New York was among 5 states most frequently cited as having a truck parking shortage, along with Georgia, Illinois, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, we'll discuss the latest news on truck parking with Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. Ashley Blackford covers insurance when you get your own authority with Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department. And we'll hear about load-to-truck ratios and the July 4th holiday from Stephen Pettit of DAT. We'll be back in just a moment with more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads, Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news, good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark. Scott here, joined by the aforementioned Tyson Fisher. Tyson, good to see you.
Great being here.
Let's start on the state level, because we have seen over the past, several weeks or so, 3 states, I think, put out surveys hoping to get a better understanding of the truck parking situation in those respective states. They say, I guess, the first step towards finding a solution is to accept the fact that there's a problem.
Sure.
These states are doing that. We're talking New Jersey, New York, and Nevada, all hopefully taking this feedback and taking action.
Yeah, so these 3 states currently have a truck parking survey out in the open. They want basically feedback from truckers. We've talked about this many times over the years about these truck parking surveys. These aren't that any different. The only thing that's different are the areas which are the focus of the survey. But, I mean, the bottom line is, yes, you pointed out, it's true for any problem you're trying to solve, which is the more data you have, the better you're going to be able to tackle that problem. So I highly encourage every trucker to take these surveys, because the more data they have, then the more accurate the representation of that data will be. So if you have like a few hundred truckers do it, it might be skewed a certain way. A few thousand truckers, you're getting closer to what's actually happening out there in the real world. So yeah, with that said, New Jersey has a survey just about truck parking in general in the state. It's a 2 different surveys. One for short haul drivers, it's basically drayage and delivery drivers. But for most of the people listening right now, there is a long haul version too. That's going to focus primarily on overnight parking in this state. So if you have issues, or if you don't have issues overnight parking, if you park overnight in New Jersey, take the survey. You only have a few days left on this one. This one is done June 16th, so you can go to landline.media, just search for truck parking. You'll find the survey there. The New York State DOT also has a survey out. Now, this one is specific to Interstate 84 in a specific section of Interstate 84. Now, if I remember right, and I'm sure some truckers are going to be yelling at me because I got this wrong, but Interstate 84 is kind of a small section of New York. It's on the southern end of it, so it's not that long, relatively speaking. So with that said, it is still a portion of Interstate 84 in New York. So if you do regularly park along I-84 in New York, take that survey. That survey ends June 28th. And then in Nevada, this one's a little different. So the Nevada survey, it says that it's a survey for its truck parking availability system. So those are those digital road signs that says how many truck parking spaces are available at the upcoming rest areas. Yeah. So they want some feedback on that, because I think they plan on building more. That's probably part of the I-10 corridor coalition that's going on. I think it was, that's incorrect. I'm gonna say
Scratch that,
because I would not go there. But it is like that. that, though, because the I-10 corridor has these signs. Nevada is looking to do the same thing, so they kind of want trucker feedback on how they prefer those signs to look like. But they also ask general questions about truck parking, so it kind of expands a little further than just those digital signs. So again, if you park in Nevada, take the survey, really help that state DOT kind of hone in on where the problem is, and then therefore fix that problem.
Yeah, they want feedback because they want to do something about this. And if they, to underline your point earlier, if they don't have that feedback, they're not going to know
what can you do?
Where the need is. So shouldn't take very long,
to
answer
minutes.
these questions.
Yeah.
If you do business in these states and work there, definitely give that feedback when and where you can, and we'll see where it goes. On a national level, and I'm curious to see what we find out from this, but the Jason's Law Truck Parking Survey now open. The last one we had was, 2020, I believe.
2020, correct.
So I will be curious to see how this one, pans out. But what should we know here, Tyson?
It's not open yet. So what happened was the Federal Highway Administration, they published a notice of request for information in the Federal Register. Basically what this is they're letting people know that they're going to start conducting the study. How should we go about doing that? So they basically said, this is how we're going to do it. Is that cool? Basically,
sure, yeah.
it's just a good way to do it.
It's the process, the regulatory process.
It's just a regulatory process before we get there. So it's just seeking comments on that, and if you can go in there and comment and say, I think this study is a waste of time, whatever. It is a comment on the process of that. Now, that being said, that does signal to us that the third version of Jason's Law Survey is coming up. And then, to that, what you're saying is like what to look for on that. I'm going to be honest with you. I have low expectations, and it's not being critical. It's just being. So the very first survey was released in 2015. That was nearly 200 pages, and it was a wealth of data. A very comprehensive report on truck parking across the nation. The second version was 2015, or I'm sorry, 2020. So 5 years later.
Not 200 pages.
30-page PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
The first many pages, just kind of an overview. It didn't. Basically, all it said was, it still sucks out there, without getting into the details. Yeah. And so I'm really hoping that FHWA or the Federal Highway Administration did get some backlash for that presentation. So hopefully they learn from that and we get something closer to that first version that we got. But either way, the information will be valuable in some form or another because it will inform state DOTs on how to proceed. And so again, when that survey is released or when it's available for comments, again, take the survey, really get that data out there.
Yeah, and we'll see. There has been, I feel like, a bigger commitment in recent years to addressing the problem, and maybe that will be reflected in the next survey that comes out. But time will tell on that one. Let's turn to Indiana now and kind of run through some other issues that are taking place in other places here. Indiana officials really devoting some time and money toward more truck parking spaces at rest areas there. And the wheels on this one are already in motion, right?
Yeah. So Indiana, man, this is a state that's doing it, man. Like they're
doing it.
They're
doing it.
They are addressing truck parking in a pretty impactful way. So less than 2 years ago, the state announced a 10-year, $600 million plan to restore rest areas at welcome centers. That includes adding more than 1,200 truck parking spots, which is nearly double for what the state already had at the time. There's 7 total parking projects. One that's already been completed on I-65. Another one will be finished this fall. That one will be on I-65 mile marker 148. And there's 3 more projects next in line. So it's the Liston, Taylorsville, and Nancy Hakes rest area. We can expect those to be done within the next year or two. Mm-hmm. So just kind of an update on what Indiana is doing, really, addressing the issue. And as you said, they're getting it done.
Getting it done, and they'll continue getting it done, it looks like, for the next, year or two and on down the line here. Because as you said, this is a 10-year, $600 million plan there that they're putting into place. Let's move quickly to Texas. Speaking of rest areas, there are a couple, I think, new ones there in West Texas, right?
Yeah, so 2 new rest areas on Interstate 10. This is just east of Van Horn, around the 145-mile marker. 116 truck parking spaces, 58 on each side. So it's one of the biggest rest areas in the state. So they're really kind of pumping up the truck parking in recent years. Pretty nice rest area. Climate control restrooms, Wi-Fi, surveillance cameras. So a nice, safe place to park. And kind of keeping with the Lone Star State, so there is the Amarillo district has their rural transportation improvement plan for 2025 through 2028. They're kind of mapping that out right now, and I was taking a look at it. They do have 4 truck parking projects in just that district alone. 2 $17 million projects and 2 $20 million projects. Basically, we're looking at more parking on US 54. US 87 and Interstate 40. So Texas, another state that's kind of looks like they're past that survey data collection phase, and they're actually pouring concrete now. So that's excellent.
Also getting it done in Texas there. Pennsylvania, also getting it done?
Pennsylvania, so the Silent Hill Rest Area, that's mile marker 172 on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Basically, it's undergoing a multi-million-dollar restoration, including truck parking. So the westbound side will go from 31 parking spaces to 68. Eastbound side from 31 parking spaces to 56. Basically between the two, truck parking will double on the Turnpike. And I know that the Pennsylvania Turnpike is one of the areas that really needs it. So that's really good to see that they're addressing the issue there.
Yeah, and I was just thinking here as I was looking at kind of our list of things that we're talking about, and we really haven't had any negative things to talk about. I'm sure I know they're out there. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I mean, to continue that, it's encouraging that we're seeing all of these projects kind of going in, throughout the country.
Really want to emphasize that although the federal government is kind of sleeping on the truck parking and safety improvement plan, states, DOTs, not all, but some are getting it done. So yeah, absolutely.
Nevada's one of them here, right?
Nevada is
I-80.
one. Yeah. So Nevada, they have a bigger I-80 widening project. So this is a big project to increase from 4 to 6 lanes. But within the widening project is also a plan to add 25 to 50 more truck parking spaces. Again, the idea here is the reason why they are widening the highways because increased traffic, meaning increased freight traffic, which means increased truck parking demand. They're seeing the bigger picture here. So it's great to see that Nevada kind of looking beyond the obvious and really honing in on the needs for the trucking and freight industries.
Yeah, because how many times have we seen projects like this that don't take truck parking into account?
Right.
We see it all the time.
Oh, sure.
But again, NDOT there in Nevada is keeping that in mind for sure. Real quick here, we've got a couple more we can run through here before we run out of time, Tyson. Empire State Development is announcing the opening of a new travel center. I believe this is in Niagara County, right?
That is correct. Okay. So, New York, another problem state when it comes to truck parking. Just opened a new travel center about a month ago. Interstate 190, exit 23. This one, the press release at least, says it was designed to attract truck drivers specifically. Basically, they noticed congestion at the border crossing bridges, and so to kind of alleviate some of that congestion, provide another fueling option for truck drivers. It didn't say how many parking spaces. It just says ample parking. So I trust that to be true.
Ample parking.
Ample
That's
is.
Subjective, I guess. But hey, I'm sure they're doing right by everybody there.
Right.
And just again to underscore what we talked about, I think to start this off.
Yeah.
With these surveys and these studies that we keep seeing over and over again, Minnesota and Georgia are 2 great examples of why these studies matter, why these surveys matter, because they are putting some of what they learned into effect with regard to truck parking, right? We're seeing Minnesota putting a bunch of money toward the problem, Georgia doing the same thing. So again, with these surveys that you continue to report on, provide feedback.
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
and where you can, and it could make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely does. It will lead eventually to more truck parking. That's the bottom line.
There you go. Tyson, we appreciate it as always.
It's always great being here.
That was Tyson Fisher. You can check out his work on the truck parking crisis and any number of other trucking issues every day on landline.media and in every issue of Landline Magazine. We'll take a break, but hang tight. We're back right after this.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro. Attention professional drivers, do you owe money to the IRS? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. Call for help now, 855-976-4291. That's 855-976-4291.
Landline Now, welcome back. Like tires, fuel, and an engine, insurance is one of those things you just have to have for your truck. But not all insurance is created equal. Ashley Blackford is here with the experts from OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department to answer some questions.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey with OOIDA's Insurance Department. How are you doing today, ladies?
Fabulous.
Great. Wonderful. Today we are talking about getting insurance after you get your own authority. What have you commonly heard from people in this situation who have called in looking for coverage?
Usually, in my experience, a lot of the times they're looking for guidance because some people are familiar with what they need to have, but a lot of people aren't. They know they need liability. And I guess that's the short answer is usually looking for guidance as opposed to saying, here's the exact coverages I need. We are more likely to start a journey of education. Mm-hmm. Here, now I won't say that about every insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that someone should get on for insurance if they have their own authority, or does it vary?
Well, they have to have primary liability coverage. That's the coverage they need that activates the authority. Either $750,000, that's the minimum. $1 million, most will go with that. And then they'll need cargo. They don't need it to activate the authority, but they'll need it for their loads.
Do you find when people call they are knowledgeable, or usually they need some guidance, like you said?
It varies, in my opinion. A lot of people, when they're leased onto a motor carrier, they kind of learn the ropes through that. Even though they don't have to carry those coverages, they're familiar with them. They know, generally that it's on the truck. And a lot of times, like Lisa was saying, primary liability is the one that activates it. And that's really the only one required by law. And usually those are the conversations that we have with folks who are kind of new to this. Cargo is not required by law, but it's going to be required by the brokers and shippers that you haul for. So they're going to set the limit that you need or what you have to haul for them. Sometimes general liability. I mean, it can vary really depending on what you're hauling and who for.
Now, in my first question, I'd said we're talking about people getting insurance after they get their own authority, but you really do recommend probably calling, like OOIDA, who does offer, a variety of services and education before you get your own authority. Is that right?
100%.
Definitely.
Now, can you explain how does the process work if someone does call in for a quote that they just got their own authority, they need coverage?
Well, typically they'll start with our prelim group to see what, do they qualify for the program? They do. They'll go on to an agent, and the agent, like we said earlier, will help educate them, basically tell them what they need, and then they're going to go through their operation. How many trucks, what kind of experience do they have, what radius are they going to travel, type of freight, things like that. And then they'll submit it to the underwriting group who hopefully within 24 to 48 hours will come back with a rate.
How important is it for the person to be upfront and honest about every incident, accident, and ticket they've had?
Honestly, that's where, it seems the most reasonable to be as upfront and honest as possible. Or as far as you can remember. We have the small situations where someone's like, I thought that was 3 years old already or something like that. But the biggest reason that we need that kind of transparency is because we really don't want to increase the rates later. And that's what we see a lot of times in the industry. Either insurance agents are doing the bulk of their underwriting after the coverage is bound, or something comes up that we were unaware of. And a lot of times it's a pretty significant increase. And the coverage is already expensive. Even if you get a good rate, it's not cheap coverage, and it just is what it is. That's going to be anywhere. But the agents don't like to call people and tell them their rates have increased, and it's just not something anyone wants to do. And so that's why we encourage, like, the more upfront you are in the beginning, the less likely that you're going to see an increase in rates later. And especially kind of going back to what we were saying about looking into this before you get your authority, that's the time that you're supposed to be gauging your overall cost. So you have to figure out what you're paying for insurance, what you're paying for permits, what you're paying for, a variety of things. Are you using a factoring company? How much is that going to take out of your overall pay? All of that really determines what you need per mile to pay the bills. And so if you base that on a certain rate and then it changes later, like it's changed the dynamic of all of that planning.
Can you call before you get your own authority and get a quote of what insurance could be if you went that route?
You can, for sure. Sometimes if you're not that far in the process, we may ballpark, give you kind of an estimate. And usually those are pretty close, but not exact. But I would almost recommend that, like Trina said earlier, before you actually get the authority. That way you can plan. You can have an idea of what you're going to need to have or make per mile to make it.
And, we mentioned the importance of being upfront and honest. One thing I found interesting, this isn't just, in your trucking career, this is also in your personal vehicle, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if we're being real, I recommend being upfront and honest in every aspect of life.
Well, exactly, yes. If you take anything from this, that's what we want you to take. But yeah, talk to me about, what are some common things that people think, well, that shouldn't matter when it comes to truck insurance?
Well, you mentioned personal vehicle, and that is, some of the times when we found out something later, it's not because we get lied to all the time. It's not like every time we find out about an accident later on in the process, it means someone's been dishonest. A lot of times it's true uncertainty about what information we need. So we'll find out about an accident and they'll say it wasn't my personal vehicle, not realizing that still impacts this quote or this policy. Or like I said earlier, sometimes maybe they think it's over 3 years old or 5 years old or however far back the insurance company goes. Lisa mentioned off the air, sometimes it's a non-preventable or like an animal strike, and they don't realize that is something we need to know.
And do some people hold back that information hoping like, well, I want a cheaper quote. I'm not going to be super upfront about everything, but you do digging, right?
Yes.
The underwriters?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we get your work history for you, who you've worked for. We call those companies, we verify, so if there's something out there, we're going to find it. So better to be truthful up front.
Now, when somebody's given a quote, that can change during the underwriting period. How long is that period typically?
That can vary per your state. Some states will have a 30-day, 60, 90, 45. It's just going to vary, but they do have that time to dig further into it and try, look for anything that wasn't given to us up front, and it could change your rate.
Now, you say change your rate. Does it ever go the other way? Like you'll call me back and say, you know what? We quoted you too high. You're going to save some money. Has that ever happened?
Not that we're aware of.
No.
We laugh about that because truly not that we're aware of. But in all honesty, I know this goes for us. Again, I don't know about other insurance companies, but we're trying to give you the lowest rate up front. Any discounts we think you can qualify for, any type of credit, anything we can do to help the rate from being too high, for your budget. Like I said, it's high enough as it is, so we want to make sure that we're giving you the best rate we possibly can up front. So that's why we typically only see increases after the fact. And so far, I've not seen a decrease.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You let me know if that ever happens.
Will do.
How important is it to know about an insurance company's cancellation policy if someone obviously isn't honest or forthcoming? Their policy can get canceled. Is that right?
Definitely, especially within that underwriting period. Some companies will have, a cancellation clause or policy that says if you cancel within a certain amount of time, or if we cancel you, you may not get any of your down payment back. Or they may prorate the policy where even though it's canceled, you might still have to pay more because of that cancellation clause.
And a lot of the times, it's a pretty hefty down payment. Most places finance the annual premium. And so you're looking at a good 20-25% of the annual premium up front. So when that happens, when you pay that large chunk of down payment and then something comes up later where your policy gets canceled, there's a chance that you might not get any of that back. In fact, and I won't go too far into this because I don't know what the resolution was, and I really only got bits and pieces of the actual issue, but I got a phone call, just a general query from someone else in the building asking about someone who had canceled their policy but still owed the finance company. Like, because they financed the annual premium, there's a third party involved. And there was something where the finance company was like, hey, you still owe us, though. And the customer, didn't realize that there's a third party involved. And that's all I could say. It depends on the contract. It depends on, what was signed, what's in writing. It's hard to speculate on how that should go or what the resolution would be, but I wasn't surprised by it.
Yeah. Now, if an insurance company does cancel your policy, the company has to give 35 days notice to FMCSA. Explain how that works and how that could impact things.
Well, I think FMCSA requires that as a protection to the insured. That way they do have time to find another policy so that they don't lose their authority. Because if they don't have active insurance filings, their authority is going to go inactive. So it provides them hopefully enough time to find somebody and find another policy. That's where knowing the cancellation policy can come in handy because you've just paid this big down payment and then all of a sudden you're canceled and finding another company and having to pay another big down payment.
Why is it so important to ask about the cancellation policy, even if, say, I'm calling an insurance company that I'm planning to go with, I want to, have them insure me? Why is it so important to ask that?
In my opinion, it's just to be proactive. Even if you have been honest and upfront and there's no reason that you can think of that the policy would be canceled, you still don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes they can submit your information to the underwriter after they've taken a down. They'll submit it before they take a down payment, but there's enough that comes up after the fact. We've even seen where someone has brand new authority, binds a policy, and then after they've made that down payment, the agent comes back and says, oh, sorry, turns out that this company doesn't write coverage for brand new authority. I don't think that's happened often, but we've heard rumors of that happening in the industry, and that's something that you can't prevent. You pay that money thinking everything's good, and then all of a sudden this issue arises. And so knowing that up front, just being proactive and knowing, okay, should something happen, here's what I'm looking at. Maybe not getting any kind of refund, maybe like Lisa said, a prorate. It's just knowledge is power.
And lastly, what information should someone have handy if they are calling, looking for a quote for insurance?
Have your equipment information, year, make, model, VIN number, have your driving information, driver's license number, a 3-year work history. Who you've worked for, dates that you were there, phone numbers.
Or been insured with.
Yeah, or been insured with if you've had a previous insurance. Kind of know those dates because we all think we remember, but when you're put on the spot, you don't.
Yeah. All right. Ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department. If you have any questions about insurance, you can call 816-229-5791. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. We'll be back after this.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford will bring us answers to both of those important questions with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Stephen Pettit with DAT. How are you doing today, Stephen?
Hey, I'm great, Ashley. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, if success on the spot market is all about knowing where the freight will be and the demand for trucks in those markets, where's the spot market headed as we move deeper into June?
Yeah, it is about knowing where the freight will be. Those are wise words from Mark Reddick. I hear that every time we do our intro. There are more loads, which is typical for this time of year, and more trucks, with carriers returning to the market after the Memorial Day holiday week. I think the number of loads on the DAT1 load board increased 5% to 2.2 million last week. That week would be June 2 through June 8. Van and reefer load posts were up about 2%, while the number of flatbed loads fell 13% compared to the previous week. Total number of trucks on DAT1 up 13%. The number of vans on the load board was up 14%, and flatbed truck posts increased by 20% last week. So still plenty of capacity to meet demand on the spot market.
Now, if there's plenty of capacity, what does that mean for spot rates?
Yeah, so truckers have less negotiating power, which means softer rates. We like to use load-to-truck ratios as an indicator of negotiating power. It measures the number of loads on DAT1 relative to the number of trucks. The higher the number, the better the conditions for carriers. Load-to-truck ratios declined for all three equipment types last week. Reefers were 6.0, down from 6.1, meaning there were 6 loads for every truck on the load board. Flatbeds, 17.9, down from 18.8. Dry vans, by far the dominant equipment type on the load board. The average van load-to-truck ratio there was 4.4 last week, down from 5.0 the previous week. Van ratio averaged 4.4 in May. Just the second time the monthly average van ratio has been above 4 since May 2022. So as a rule of thumb, the van ratio under 4 indicates soft demand, and those conditions have persisted for 22 out of the last 24 months. In the meantime, spot rates kind of continue to bounce along the bottom of the freight cycle. Van rate averaged $2.07 a mile over the last 7 days, or $1.64 when you subtract an amount equal to a fuel surcharge. Reefer rate $2.47 a mile, or $2 net fuel. Flatbed rate $2.60 a mile, or $2.09 net fuel. And these are weekly national average rates. They're based on RateView, which is DAT's database of truckload transactions. They're not the broker asking price posted on the load board. RateView provides benchmark rates based on invoices for actual loads moved. I think this is a reminder that we can talk about averages and benchmarks. It's great, but every spot load is unique. And the only rate that matters is the one between you and the broker.
It feels like the spot market has been stuck in neutral for a long time.
Yeah, it sure has. I mean, we actually see similarities to 2019, which was a really prolonged period of soft demand and really a challenging year for small carriers and owner operators. In 2019, the peak retail season was basically non-existent. We had, ongoing trade tensions between the U.S. and China, including tariffs that increased costs for manufacturers and consumers. And there were more than enough trucks to meet demand. It feels pretty similar to where we're at today. Average spot van rate that year was $1.85 a mile. And by the end of 2019, a lot of truckers were operating deep into the red or they were exiting the market. We don't know actually what a freight recovery would have looked like in 2020 because COVID's effect on the economy and supply chains and consumer spending. And when you think about it, we have not had a typical freight recovery in a very, very long time.
What are some of the signs that would indicate that we're pulling into a better rate environment on the spot market?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a strong consolidated peak shipping season for retail goods would be one, and we're starting to see that. National Retail Federation said this week that monthly inbound cargo volume is expected to reach its highest level in nearly 2 years this summer. Consumers continue spending more than last year, and retailers are stocking up to meet that demand. Imports of containerized goods are really booming right now, especially on the West Coast at the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, Seattle, and Tacoma. So those port markets are really heating up. Yesterday, van load to truck ratio in DAT's Los Angeles market was 14.4, meaning there were more than 14 van loads for every truck in the market. The number of spot van loads out of LA increased 18% last week. Phoenix is by far the number one market for loads out of Los Angeles, followed by Ontario and that Inland Empire area, Stockton, Dallas, and Seattle. LA to Phoenix, that's a 370-mile trip. It averaged $3.29 a mile last week. Van load to truck ratio in Phoenix is about 12 right now, meaning that truck demand is well above the national average there. And that's a good reminder that when you're searching for loads on the spot market, you want to get a good load out of whatever market you're heading into, and Phoenix fits the bill.
What about reefer freight? The weeks leading up to the 4th of July are a busy time for fresh and frozen produce haulers.
Right. So a strong produce season would be another one of those indicators of a freight recovery. It just means that consumers are buying and producers are producing. Last week's reefer load post volume was down 9% year over year. But it's kind of hard to talk about a national produce scene because it's such a regional and commodity specific sort of market. California's Central Valley, that's DAT's Stockton and Fresno markets. That's the country's really, the hottest region for reefer freight right now. Stone fruits, that's peaches, nectarines, apricots, plums, they're all in season, as are berries and sweet cherries. June is the beginning of the tomato harvest season in Central Valley. One way to stay on top of regional demand for trucks is to check out the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Specialty Crops National Truck Rate Report. This is a weekly report. It's available online. It's free from the USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service, or AMS. Breaks the country down into 17 different regions and provides just a really simple color-coded assessment of reefer availability in each area. Like, is there a shortage of trucks, an adequate number or surplus? Are we sort of red, yellow, or green in each area? And last week, there was an adequate number of trucks in all 17 growing regions across the United States. So shippers in the regions covering Mexico crossings in South Texas and the Yakima Valley and the Wenatchee area in Washington State all reported a surplus of trucks.
Is there anything else that might affect flatbed freight markets? Anything owner-operators should be aware of?
So energy production in Texas and flatbed freight out of Houston. U.S. Energy Information Administration expects domestic crude oil production to increase by 2% this year to an annual average of 13.2 million barrels per day. And then it's expected to rise another 4% in 2025. Permian Basin accounts for almost 50% of domestic crude oil production. I like to look at the Baker Hughes rig count report, which listed 310 active oil rigs last week. That number has been above 300 since February 2022. Houston is the country's number one market for spot flatbed freight, and a good portion of that freight goes into DAT's Lubbock market, which includes the Permian Basin. Over the last 3 days, Houston to Lubbock averaged $3.08 a mile, and capacity is very tight in both markets. So if you're a flatbed hauler, Texas oil production and all the freight needed to support it is something to watch, especially in an election year. And one last thing I would encourage flatbed carriers to do, no matter where you are, is to post your truck and trailer type with as much detail as possible. The more descriptive you can be in your post, the less you'll have to explain to the broker. And if you have a specialized trailer or tarps and chains or experience hauling a particular commodity, be sure to put that in the description when you post your truck on the load board.
Where can people learn more about DAT?
Yeah, sure. Head over to DAT.com or check out DATIQ on YouTube. Our analytics team has new episodes on that channel every Tuesday, and they take a really good deep dive into the freight markets. It's worth your time.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much.
Hey, anytime, Ashley.
That was Stephen Pettit with DAT. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
Get the most power and performance out of your rig with Howe's Diesel Defender. It provides maximum lubricity and contains specialized IDX4 detergent to clean and prevent deposits and safely removes harmful water. Visit HowesProducts.com for more information.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.